Now, is this your basement? Is that what the basement in the chateau in Vegas looks like? It's like
This
12-foot
is my
ceilings.
studio. This is my
Okay.
studio at my chateau. I don't have nobody has basements in Las Vegas. So,
Oh, yes. I mean, there's no frost depth.
okay, you
I,
know what?
yeah.
I'm saying this right now. You think we haven't started yet, but I'm saying we have started, and all that stuff is going to be on my podcast. All you're making
Great.
fun of my basement. Ladies
Uh,
and gentlemen, this
hi.
is
Hi.
Marty O'Donnell
Yeah.
with his friend Chris Carney. Hello, everybody. This is the Marty O'Donnell Show, and this is episode 4, I believe. And this week is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to go deep diving into the development process, especially on Halo. But this is for anybody who's interested in how do games get made. The guest that I have on today, Chris Carney, is one of my favorite developers that I ever worked with. I met him right away in 2001. Apparently, it was May of 2001. So we had a very intense time. He worked on multiplayer for Halo 1, and then he went on to work on multiplayer for Halo 2. He's an architect and a map designer. Um, I just realized there was one thing I wanted to talk to him about, and I didn't, and it was the Carney holes. So if you guys know anything about multiplayer in Halo, you know that there is these mythical locations in a lot of the maps that somehow we came up with the name Carney holes. These are little places that Chris Carney designed in that we used to think only he knew about. I think we used to think that he would give himself an advantage when we were testing playing these maps. Carney was able to know the maps better than anybody, of course, because he designed them. So I think that's where the nickname Carney holes came up, but I don't know. We'll have to have him back again to confirm that. So without further ado, here's the show with my good friend Chris Carney. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm introducing you today to my good old friend Chris Carney.
I am old. Yeah.
We're back to, last week we took a sidetrack. We had this New York comedian on who was absolutely a blast, Danny Polishuk. And this week, the week before that, we had Nolan North. And we started with Mike Hill, but Nolan North is such a famous voice actor. But this person here, Chris Carney, also a famous voice actor. I'm not sure if you
No.
guys knew this, but
No.
we're gonna
It's
we're
not
gonna get
true.
into that. It is
No.
true.
Super. Super. Already the quality of this conversation is just dropping
Yeah,
on a
I see you
minute
even
by
have a
minute
keyboard in
basis.
the back there. What is that?
When I get inspired and I'm walking around the room, I sit down and do a little ditty. Uh, no,
See,
that
I don't believe
is
this. It's got to be for your daughters or something.
they tried the piano for a while. The beautiful thing about a keyboard is it has headphones. So as they experience it, the
Yeah, that's
house
true.
doesn't.
Okay.
Uh, so I leave it there to encourage them to sit down occasionally and compose their opus, but just doesn't seem to work
Okay.
much.
But both
Yeah.
your daughters are now they're high school? No.
12 and 14.
12
So
and
they're
14.
both
Wow.
actually
So
for this
middle
year
school.
in middle school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
Man.
Uh, but wait, I'm not done with your basement.
Okay, this
So
is not a basement. This is
y
my studio.
there's the Destiny logo, the sheet music. Is that a?
Oh, see, yeah, you're noticing some of the things.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see what do we got here is I believe
Oh
that's
yeah, the Halo One sculpture, the Elite.
yeah, the elite sculpture there.
Yeah.
And there's a
Yeah.
grunt there.
Okay. All
And
right.
that is my YouTube something something.
For what?
And then
For
I think over to the side you can
okay.
see it, but yeah, I have my Music of the Spheres album that I like to keep prominently
Yeah.
displayed for
Right.
people who pick up on those sort of things.
So why did YouTube give you an award? Is that
Let's
for
see.
having
There
so
it is.
many
There's the
listeners or views or?
YouTube just thought I was just great, so they
Hmm.
just out of the goodness of their heart they
Hmm.
decided to just give me an award. No, this is I don't think YouTube has a clue who I am actually. They once you pass 100,000 subscribers, you're
Oh,
supposed to just automatically get this little plaque that says you've got 100,000 subscribers.
wow.
And I passed it, and then got to 110, then 120, and then 130. Still got no plaque. So I ended up having to email them, and I don't know why, but it
Mm-hmm.
took them months to decide that I
You
deserved
hit the bar.
the plaque. I don't know if they were suspicious of how I got this
Mm-hmm.
100,000.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it was, but it didn't come right away. But now I have it, and I'm proudly displaying it here.
No, it's very impressive.
Thank
It's
you.
impressive.
That's
Yeah, the whole ensemble
I
is
live.
impressive.
I live to
Yeah.
impress Chris Carney. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris
Oh
Carney.
God. Yes.
He is a developer artist extraordinaire. Seriously. He has been a major contributor to probably many games that you've played and don't even realize. He's one of those unsung developers, unlike
Oh,
me,
stop
who's
it.
always grabbing the spotlight.
Well, when we first met, you always said that you were a bit of a prima donna, and it's true. It is true.
I don't remember always saying that. But it's true. That was a technique I would actually use. I called it the prima donna technique,
Mm-hmm.
which is like, how could you ask me to do such a thing? That kind of stuff. Like, I will not compromise my artistic principles and do this whatever thing I'm being asked to do.
And did
And
that work out for you?
It didn't usually work
Okay.
out.
Okay. Right.
As you know, I've had a few bumps in the road along the development process.
You know,
but
you're fine. People
Good.
love you. They think you're amazing.
some people do, yes.
I mean,
I've got, unlike you, so you probably don't have people who split on whether they're fans of yours or not. You have no fans.
I have no fans.
One of the deal, yeah.
I mean, not.
But we're going to
intentionally,
change
but
that today because
No.
people should absolutely be fans of you. I mean, your face, your face is in the moon. I think Paul Russell did that. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a Paul
And
Russell special.
your banter back and forth with Paul Russell was historically funny and wonderful. And rest in peace, Paul Russell. Oh no, he's still alive. I'm sorry.
Yes. I hope so. No, Paul Russell was. I mean, so to be fair,
Sure.
Let's get into this.
Yeah, I mean, jump right into it.
So when I started at Bungie, I was a lowly contractor, hired to work on a 3.5 month contract on Halo 1. Hardy LaBelle essentially said, sit down and build as many things as you can. That was my job. So I started building stuff, but I didn't really understand the engine that well. I didn't really understand Forerunner architecture. Remember Halo 1, the Forerunner?
Oh,
They had all
yes.
these cool angles.
Forerunners, who, by the way, can you confirm are human, right?
I never knew that, but apparently.
Just go with me. Yes,
Okay.
Forerunners are human.
Yes, yeah, they're ancient lost race of human, the 13th tribe.
That
There we
was
go. They're spacefaring.
Yeah, they were the spacefaring, right?
Yes. But as I got into the engine, and I was very excited. I mean, I had always wanted to work in games, and here I am at Bungie working on Halo, which I'd always been a pretty big Bungie fan. I had played like Myth and a lot of Marathon 2. And so, actually, you were the one who helped me squirm into the door. I owe you my career.
So I've done this a few times with people.
Okay.
And my memory is completely accurate in my head, and then I say something, and people go, "No, that wasn't the way it was." Here's how I remember it.
Okay.
Somehow, you, as a contractor, but I don't know why you were talking to me, but somehow either you got an interview and were blown off, and then you somehow ended up talking to me, and I'm not sure how or why. Maybe it was like I have this memory of meeting you in a parking lot. Is that possible? Did we just like happen to run into each other in the parking lot?
No, but that story's way better than my story. So let's roll with that.
Okay, well,
Okay.
I just remember at some point talking to you, and you were like, "Hey, I'm that guy that came in for a meeting, and I'm a job interview, and you encouraged me, and then I just got the cold shoulder. I was blown off. Can you go back and find out what I could have done better, or what was the problem?" And so I went to Hardy, and I said, "Hey, this guy's asking me what didn't you like about Chris?" And
Mm.
I don't remember.
No, this story's great. Keep
Yeah,
going.
it had. I think it had to do something. Had something to do with your height, if I remember correctly.
That's probably true.
No, that's not
It
true.
is. It is
I'm
probably
sorry.
true.
That's just a
Yeah.
horrible. I'm a bad person.
No, no,
But
you're fine.
but somehow I decided. I encouraged Hardy to give you another shot. I knew, and I'm trying to remember how this worked because, as you know, we had not planned on. We didn't know what we were going to do with Halo multiplayer.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have a team for it. Michael Evans and Hardy
Right.
LaBelle were sort of dragged and kicking and screaming off of the project they wanted to work on, which was going to be something after Oni. And they were said, look, you got to do, you got to ship the Halo multiplayer. And then Hardy needed people to make maps. And I don't know, like I knew you were an architect.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was interesting. But believe it or not, my memory is that he had sort of had his fill with guys who were architects but weren't game designers.
Mm.
And he was like, these people who are architects, they don't understand what it means to make a game space. And I'm like, I had some sort of conversation with Chris, and he talked about virtual worlds and flow and 3D virtualization. I don't know. He talked nice big words that had made me feel like he would do something cool.
That makes me feel wonderful.
I know. Yeah. And then I think Hardy said, all right, maybe I'll give him another interview or something. So I think did he call you back in, or what happened then?
Well, what I remember is very different. But I
well,
love your
usually
story.
What happens? Okay.
I love your story. So I was working. I actually applied to Bungie when Bungie was in Chicago and Oni was getting made in
San Jose.
Yeah, San Jose. And I applied, I think, to work on Oni because they were looking for a world designer, a level designer who had architectural experience, and they already had Michael Wu and a bunch of other folks who were architecturally trained.
Dave Dunn.
So I was like, oh yeah, Dave Dunn. So I said, oh, I got this. This is right down my alley. I did not get that job. So then I moved out to Seattle to an architecture job, and I was working in downtown on some sweet parking garages. I think I did some restroom. And Microsoft bought Bungie and moved them out.
Right.
So I had been going to this organization called Sputnik, and Sputnik was back in the Wild West of game development in the Pacific Northwest. A lot of game developers would get together in Seattle like once a month.
That was like Nintendo's place, right?
Well, it used to be way more edgy, where they'd go to some studio, bring in the keg, and then everyone would sit there and vent for an hour and a half.
Interesting.
And I knew nothing about game development. I mean, I played a lot of games, but I didn't understand how they were made. But somehow I figured out there was this meeting, so I started going to these meetings just to listen.
Yeah.
I didn't know anyone. And then DigiPen kicked up, like Nintendo started this university, and they somehow acquired Sputnik and made it a much more rigorous university thing rather than the Wild Wild West.
I don't remember that. I remember going to one of those meetings or something much later. I think I was asked to speak at
You were the speaker of like the first one or second one.
Okay. Is that where we met?
So we go there, and I listened just incredible dissertation for an hour about music, games. What was it? The Mist, the guys in Spokane.
Right, Riven and Mist, sure.
Their absolute love for you. And so, it was a massive audience, of course. And at the end, you said, well, if anyone has any questions, and you wrote your email on the board. So then we started talking over email.
Okay.
And one thing I really admired about you was you said, hey, I'm a composer, but I work in games. I'm a composer first for a lot of good reasons. I think about music as a composition and as an experience. And then, I work in games to see what I can add or how I can make that game experience more engaging. So I thought about, for me, I was very similar. I'm an architect. I want to design cool spaces in the computer. I want to build levels and worlds and games. So you and I bonded over the email.
Okay, so I was trying to figure out why we had a relationship before you
Yeah.
ever applied. I couldn't remember
Yeah.
that. So it was Sputnik. Now I remember.
And then you said, send me your stuff and I'll see what I can do. So I stayed up many late nights, put together his portfolio, sent that into you. You were very nice. I think you forwarded that to Hardy.
I did. Yeah,
And
that
then
now makes
he
sense.
politely rejected me.
Okay, so he rejected you without even you didn't even get the interview the first time.
No, no,
Okay, so
no.
he was rejecting me, frankly. I think he was rejecting the
Us.
fact that I
Hey,
was trying
us.
to yeah, he was
Well,
rejecting
and I was this anchor attached to your leg. Yes. So then I think things got a little desperate as far as they wanted to, you guys had come back from E3. Yeah, I think you had showed Blood Gulch. People were pretty into it, and there were, it was decided, hey, we need some more maps. And so
Yeah.
um, I think you had also, I had asked you some questions after I got the rejection, and you had followed up with Hardy about some things. So then I actually got the interview and
Okay.
wormed my way in there.
So was this must have been this is like summer almost of 2001 then.
May, late May.
Late May.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so you were
Yeah.
actually some extent you were one of the last people to come on the team for Halo 1
I think
Combat Evolved.
me and Jay Wineland,
Uh
were the like
Jay
last.
was he was he was a freelancer up until that point, and then I got him. He
Yeah,
had been working with me the whole time, but not I don't think he was a full timer yet. He wasn't a
officially.
Microsoft
Uh,
employee, so he must have got in around the same time. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I forgot the Sputnik thing. I'm trying to remember, but the night that I spoke at Sputnik, was that the night that um, Valve? Oh my gosh, how do I forget
No, you're old. It's
I
okay. I
am
do the
old.
same thing. I do the same thing.
Valve's founder? What's his name?
Gabe.
Gabe Newell.
Yes.
Was Gabe Newell there that night?
I don't remember. I think when I went there, it was just you speaking, but he might have spoke
Okay, I think
before.
I spoke at a couple of those, and one where Gabe spoke, and he introduced Steam to the world. He said, "I got
Mm.
this idea for a digital store with games," and I thought that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard.
And it was right. Right.
I have not been all that great at predicting things. I have a couple of things I've predicted come true, but a lot of things I missed the boat. Um, yeah, so then you came in, and so that whole time you worked on Halo 1,
Yeah,
you were actually a contractor,
I
but
was.
you did. So for some reason, I thought you made Blood Gulch, but Blood Gulch was one of the first ones we made. You must have tweaked it. You must have done a little something, something.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll get back to Paul Russell, where this all
Yes,
started.
it's true.
So Paul Russell was always very kind to me and would explain like who the Forerunner were and really how they built, how their
Yeah.
forms looked. Also, he knew a ton about Studio Max, and I had totally lied when I got my job with Bungie. Like, oh yeah, I use Studio Max all the time.
All the time. Yeah.
I had never used it.
You know,
And
here's a little advice to all you youngsters who are listening out there. It's okay to lie about software because software is learnable. You
yeah,
can, don't let that be the reason why you don't get the gig. Let them fire you after they learned you lied. But like, if you say you're good with some software, then I don't think that's a horrible thing because you can always learn software. That
yeah.
if you could pick things up, you could pick that up. So
And
anyway, go ahead.
no, I think that's actually really, I shouldn't say actually. That's very good advice. I knew how to model using other software, but I'd never used Mac. So I spent a week or two with a book, like trying to just get up on how to do stuff. But even then, there were a lot of things I didn't fully understand how to do in Macs. And Paul Russell was always amazing about just explain it like I'm five. All right, this is what you're trying to do. This is
Okay.
how you do it. And so, Blood Gulch, I believe at E3 was very flat. And so when I got my hands on it, the first thing I did was kind of remove the terrain and then added all the hills.
Oh,
And that was to try, like you could snipe from base to base and like the ranges were crazy. So it was trying to think of a way to kind of compartmentalize the map into sections, and hills were just a nice way of doing that. So you could come out of the base and you could kind of move around the area, like to the sides, and you weren't essentially exposed the entire map. Um, and then I also started working a lot on the cliffs because there were kind of these random paths that went up to the cliffs. So flushing that all out with my amazing modeling skills, which were terrible at the time.
See, I love hearing you talk about this because I don't think people realize how important to your to the player's enjoyment the design of these spaces are. Like you
Yeah.
took that so seriously, and I love that because then the more we worked together, or you were on the team doing the multiplayer stuff, and then of course you just knocked it out of the park for Halo 2, but you were always sharing, you would have some printed out idea of what was going to happen, then you would rough it out, and then we would get to play these rough versions of maps that were just sort of blocks and
Yeah, gray box.
geometry, the gray box, and it was
Right.
still fun to play, but then you were constantly learning, like you were watching the
Right.
flow, right? I mean, you were
Yeah.
watching how human beings flowed through
Right.
the environments you made, and they always just got better and better and better. And like I think some of the most people's favorite times are playing on the maps that you designed. That I mean, then you crafted those, every little detail. You did. I mean,
Well,
come on.
no, I mean, first of all, I do a lot of, and back then, do a lot of drawing of like, well, what's the idea? So, if we look at Blood Gulch, okay, this is going to be a crazy 8-on-8 map, vehicles, somewhat symmetrical. So you can kind of build a framework of like, okay, well, this is the problem we're trying to solve. Like, this
Yeah.
is the purpose of this map. And it's important to kind of draw that out or at least think about it so then you know what good is. Like,
Mm.
oh, when we get all this working, then we'll say, oh, this is good. Or maybe it's terrible. We have plenty of maps that are terrible. So you get to that point and you're like, well, is it just we're not hitting the goal? Like we tried to do too much crazy stuff and 8-on-8 doesn't feel really good or vehicles don't have enough space? Or is it like that model 8-on-8 with vehicles isn't very good, so we reassess the goal and say, all right, well now let's build a more clear goal and be pretty rigorous about what we're designing and drawing and gray boxing so that we're always trying to make something that's, let's say, not terrible.
Yeah.
So, keep hold. Because the other thing is you could build a map and throw a bunch of cover in and it could be fun to run around, but that's not going to have a lot of legs.
Right.
If it's not really kind of aimed at some specific goals that you're trying to achieve. And then I think the other thing about that too is once you build those maps and they land in that area where you think they're going to be good and then they get out there or even I think
Yep.
one thing that made all our maps so good for Halo, all the Halos was we would all just play test them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like you're play testing, I'm play testing, we have all the cast of clowns play testing and so you're getting tons of feedback.
Yeah.
And that's really where the maps get good. It's not that original idea. It's
Right.
the iteration and
Yeah.
iteration. So, like the Halo 2 maps, which, because, well, single player was having issues and redefining things, we were able to throw all these bodies at Halo 2 multiplayer maps, just iterating on them over and over and over again. So by the time we got to the finish, they were all real clear as far as what they were meant for
Yeah.
and they had just had so much playtesting that they all were fairly good. Well, not terrible.
I've heard it said writing is editing, and I feel like map design is
Yeah.
iteration. I mean, and some of my favorite times at Bungie, I don't think people really understand it, especially now when teams have gotten 1,000 people, 1,200 people, and all that. But back in the day when it was just like 30 something of us,
Right.
like everybody played, everybody did everything, everybody tested the maps, and there was a point of time where I was actually pretty good at playing Halo. Hey,
Okay.
oh wow,
No, you tried hard. You had
I
moments.
was one of the best 30 or so players in the world at that early stage when there was only 30 or so.
That is that. If you took the best 50 players in the world,
Yeah.
you were in that group.
I was in that group. Okay.
That is correct.
Jeez, the respect, the
No,
lack
it's-
of respect.
It's love.
It is love. Okay.
It is.
I remember we played Counter-Strike. I was actually kind of good at Counter-Strike
Yeah.
in the studio, except I would team kill Dan Orslak like every time. He would always run ahead, take some secret path, and I'd be running, and he'd be the first one who would jump out in front of me, and I'd shoot him and kill him, and he'd just scream from across the room. But
And he took feedback well.
Yeah.
too. Yeah. Did. He did.
Wow, I gotta find old Dan. I wonder where he is now. It's been a while.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well,
Yeah.
what I was going to say is that I think you were actually the perfect person to come in because of this. You had the game playing background. You played Myth: The Fallen Lords and Myth 2: Soulblighter, and you appreciated sort of what Bungie had already been doing in terms of map design. And then I think you really took the ball and ran with it, and it was like you took multiplayer maps really, really seriously. And I'm trying to remember, like, you didn't design necessarily every multiplayer map in Halo 1, but did you touch all of them? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so when I got there, there were probably 7 or 8 that had been sort of just gray boxed.
Sure.
So in the end, I was able to touch a bunch of those, and then the first one I ever worked on from scratch was Prisoner, which was
Oh, yeah.
it was okay. A lot of ladders, a lot of
Yeah.
climbing.
And a lot of high points. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, and then I started working on Chill Out. So Stephen
Sure.
Okazaki had laid out like 3 or 4 maps, but then he was an animator, so he
Right.
just had tons to do. So then I started picking up some of these loose blockouts that he had done and kind of formally gray box those. And so like Chill Out and Battle Creek and some of these little like 2-on-2, 4-on-4 maps, we spent a lot of time on. And then for Halo 2, it was just come up with a whole palette from scratch. But I'm working with Max Hoberman and
Well, yeah, it's interesting
Steve
because
Cotton.
Max was not in charge of multiplayer in Halo 1, but he was a community guy and he knew,
Yeah.
and he was also a player. So he
Yep.
was one of the people playing multiplayer all the time.
Yep.
And then once we shipped Halo 1, I think he was involved with the community enough to see all the feedback for how
Mm-hmm.
much people were playing. People sort of forget too that how close we came to not shipping multiplayer in Halo 1. I'm think even after we hired you, I think there still might have been a possibility that we wouldn't have shipped.
Yeah.
Or was it? Did we know for sure by the time you were hired? Do you know?
I think I was the last desperate hire to help get it out the door. But
Okay.
I had heard that there had been conversations before I got up there where it was going to get cut.
Yeah, yeah. And it was, when you think about how devastating that would have been without
Right.
anybody knowing. I mean, if it's not there, you don't miss it. But like, I look at the history of Halo's success, and if we didn't have multiplayer, and it was funny because it was, at first it was Microsoft had told us that the Xbox was going to be internet ready and we
Hmm.
would be able to do internet multiplayer because we'd already done multiplayer over the internet with Marathon and
Yeah, and Myth.
for sure Myth.
Yeah.
Marathon was more than LAN, right? It was you could play it over the internet, or am I remembering wrong?
Marathon 2, I played it on LAN, but
Okay.
I'm not sure if you could play it over the
Yeah.
internet.
Well, we knew how much fun LAN could be, but we
Yeah.
sort of didn't think that LAN parties would be that big a part of the experience because once Microsoft said no internet, they wouldn't be able to support the infrastructure for online play. We really got sort of like, well, we were having a hard enough time finishing the single player game. Maybe we shouldn't put any more effort into multiplayer. So, boy, that would have been a devastating decision not to ship multiplayer because that's what gave Halo its legs. And then I think it's interesting that we still made the mistake starting working on Halo 2 to think that instead of just sort of improving the formula of multiplayer, we should do this entire warfare
Right.
fictionalized thing
Right.
that if I remember correctly, that was sort of Tyson was going to be in charge of
sure.
that. And it was like all we had was documents. Nothing was really working in that area.
Right.
Max was losing his mind. That's the way I remember it. Max
Yeah.
was like, "Hey, this multiplayer, out for Halo 1 is taken off and is exploding and everybody's playing it." And we were calling it the party game. And he was
Right.
like, we shouldn't make fun of the party game. It's
Right.
really important.
Right.
So was it just you and Max that kind
Yeah.
of took over Halo 2 multiplayer?
No, when I I worked on something else for a year, and when I came back to Halo 2, it was just Max and I working on the party game for.
Wait, so after your contract was up at Bungie, you went someplace else?
No, I got hired, and then I worked on Phoenix for a year,
Oh gosh, that's right.
which was the Castle Smash kind of myth-like game.
Oh, so
Yeah.
the first year of Halo 2 development, nobody was working on the quote unquote party game.
No,
The actual thing Halo 2 is known for in terms of multiplayer, nobody was working on it for a
I'm sure
year.
there's some fantastic docs that were written during that time. Yeah. But even
Wow.
then, when Max and I were working on, the party game,
Yeah.
all this attention was still being paid on Warfare, and we were just, I mean, it was kind of nice because we sort of got left alone and we were able to just design a bunch of maps and prototype and gray box a bunch of things and got that really feeling good. And then we did do a Warfare prototype for a couple months, but that
I remember playing that, and I remember it just never feeling right.
it just was pretty loose as
Yeah.
far as what it was supposed to be. But then that kind of ended right before E3, where we were supposed to show off multiplayer. So
Wow.
we
Okay. It's typical last minute.
right. So
Yeah.
then we had like 5 weeks to come up with something because we had showed. I think we had done the whole Earth City thing, the E3 before. So we couldn't show another campaign thing. It's like, yeah, this is all going to be
Yeah,
about
you're right.
multiplayer.
Earth City was the Halo 2 had three kind of major events. It had the first announcement trailer, which we did all with stencil shadows, and it
Hmm.
was gorgeous and
And it was rendered out a frame at a time,
frame at a
and then
time. And he
yes,
says, Cortana says, "What if you miss?" And he goes,
right,
"I won't."
yeah,
And goes out.
yeah,
Big climax. That was the first thing we did. They got everybody excited. Yes, we are making Halo 2, and it's going to be great.
right,
And then, of course, we had no idea what we were going to do. Um,
yes,
then we did the Earth City demo, which was huge. And by the way, I don't know if you saw, they re-released that, so it's playable
mm,
now.
mm.
You can actually play the Earth City demo.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Was that someone like finding the data on a disk and oh,
Yeah.
heck.
I think Microsoft allowed this team to access all the original data and put
Mm,
it together, and it's
mm.
a mod. You can download it and play it. I've seen several different people actually play through the
I'm
demo, and it
sure it's
doesn't break. It's
incredible.
pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so that was at the first E3
Hmm.
that was like, this is how great the single player is going to be, and
Hmm.
here's dual wielding, and here's hijacking the vehicles, and look, all this great stuff. Here's introducing the brutes, I think. Uh, yeah,
Yeah,
we introduced the brutes.
yeah,
By the way, Butkus, the Cananimators were,
yeah.
high in there, showing us how the brutes were going to hijack
Animate big
vehicles.
guys.
Big
There we
guys,
go.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the next year we weren't supposed to show at E3. We weren't supposed to go to E3 at all. And I remember it's like Microsoft powers that be, Robbie Bach and company were panicking that they didn't have anything really snazzy to
Mm.
show at E3. And so we were like, well, maybe would you like to show a little Halo? We sort of offered that.
Mm.
Like, what will you do for us? We'll milk Halo one more time. And so they were very excited about it. And then we suddenly had to come up with what was that gonna be. So now you take over. We probably came
Right.
to you and Max and said, we got to do this whole thing around
We got
multiplayer.
about 5 weeks, and we need to build something for E3. So, uh,
Don't tell me you started then to build Zanzibar.
yeah,
You're kidding.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
No, and I mean, actually, the way we went about it, and Steve Cotton was also involved in this. The three of us said, okay, well, we need to build something fairly simple. So, because people like the press and players are going to play it, and
Yeah.
they're not going to have a lot of time to warm up on like how's this map laid out. Um, so it had to be relatively simple. We wanted to show off single flag CTF,
Mm-hmm.
which we had in Halo 1, but it was kind of just some settings you could turn off and on.
Yeah.
And we were having a ton of fun with it in playtest. So it's like,
Yeah.
all right, let's make a map that's focused on the single flag CTF.
And we had proximity voice in there because that was one of my babies. I really wanted prox voice, and
I was
I
with
thought
you.
it was great. I thought it was
I believed in the dream. I'm like, this is gonna be amazing.
great.
And then we had like Havoc, so we wanted to have like moving objects, and we had like frozen hinges. And this is where, again, like I was talking about before, we come up with like the goal. All right,
Yeah,
this is what we
yeah,
want this thing to be. These are all the things we want to show off. This is the complexity of the map. And so Zanzibar, when you think about it, I guess like from the top down is like one team starts on the beach, and then there's like these three walls that they have to go through,
yeah,
and then there's the flag. So really it's like run in and get the flag, run back out to the beach, and you win. And then in each one of the, like, that first wall was literally the sea wall,
yeah.
and it had all these interesting
Nooks and
ways in
crannies,
there,
man.
and things to weapons to pick up. And then the next wall was like the big wheel, and we had like the sword in the middle, and it also was this vantage point for the defenders where they could call out where the attackers were coming from. And then the final wall was the building itself.
Yeah,
And in there we wanted to show off this crazy stencil buffer that we could do in multiplayer where if the space was really tight, we could have a gel on a light. So like we had this grid on these lights, and then
yeah.
it would show up on your hands as you ran through those.
Oh, nice. I
And
don't
then we
remember
could
that.
put physics on those so they could be moving, and as you're running, the moving gel is across your. And we were like, oh my god, that'd be so cool.
Yeah,
So we built this real tight hallway on the
yeah.
second floor to show that off.
Oh, interesting. Oh, I
And
remember
then
because the lights would also move up in that.
if you
You
like
could
threw a
shoot them.
grenade or
Yeah,
melee attacked them, they would move.
yeah,
Yeah.
they would swing. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that being. Plus, I remember you talking about the hinges. Like we had those sheet metal
Right.
covers on the windows or something, and they were
Right.
up. And then if you shot the hinges out, they would come down and bang, and the physics would work. Did we
Yeah.
ever use that anyplace else, or was that it?
Pretty limited use.
Well, I remember
Rest
working
of the
on that.
game.
How do we make it sound like the hinges are broken and they slang and
Well,
slap
remember there's
down and clang and all that?
the big entry bridge too. So if
Oh
you're an
yeah,
attacker,
huge.
there was that fusion core thing on the bridge, and if you shot that, it would release the hinge, and the thing would slam down and
Yeah,
let the defenders know, oh, they're coming in
yeah,
upstairs.
yeah.
Again, amazing tech that we really didn't use
Now,
much
and
there.
and Camp Froman was
Yeah,
that's because of I don't think many people know this, but that was
Luke
our
Timmons.
friend Luke Timmons, whose
Yes,
nickname his gamer tag. You were Danger Boy, right from the beginning, right?
I am. Yes,
And you're still Danger Boy.
I am.
Do
Yes.
you remember who I am? Do you remember mine? Oh,
Hold on. I don't. God damn, I don't.
Lance.
Oh, it is Lance. Yeah, it's Lance. That's right.
Remember?
Where does Lance come from?
See, you even put Lance in the. Oh, it comes from me playing Dark Castle back on one of my first
Uh,
Macs in 1986. There was a
all
game
right.
called Dark Castle, and
Oh, I love Dark Castle.
the little
Yeah.
character looked like Lancelot to me.
Oh, gotcha.
I forget what his actual name was, but my save name was always Lance.
Mm.
And then when I started playing other games, like to this day, my wife still believes that Link is not actually Link in Zelda, but is Lance.
It's Lance.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and so do
That's
my
awesome.
kids. My kids
All
believe
right.
that too. So, yeah, I've always used Lance, and as soon as Xbox Live came out, I grabbed that gamer tag. So
Mhm.
I still have it. It's funny.
It's a good one. Lance.
Yeah.
Lance.
Now, there's no numbers. There's no extra It's just Lance.
That is just simple.
Lance. Even Lance Armstrong cannot be Lance in
Right.
Xbox Live.
There's only one. It's just you.
There can be only one.
But-
Yeah. Anyway, so
No, Froman.
yeah, Froman. So Luke Timmons, during playtesting, he found a great place to just
So annoying.
snipe all the time and he would camp that spot.
And he was so good that
Yeah.
it was just impossible to get him out of there. And so, yes, that became Camp Froman. And then on the other side, there was a tower,
Yeah.
which, oh, this is interesting. We ripped out a lockout. So we had this tower in lockout that played pretty well, that had a bridge. Actually, it might have been Ascension. It's the same tower.
Okay.
We ripped that thing out, slammed that into the other side of Zanzibar, and that became anti-Froman. So Camp Froman.
I was going to say,
Froman.
you must have done something so it wasn't so easy to camp there,
Yeah,
even though we labeled it Camp Froman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to ask if we were doing something to disguise the fact that we just ripped this from another
No, I'm
map and
sure we didn't.
we just
We
rotated
didn't
it 90
rotate.
degrees. Yeah.
See, that's
Yeah. Done.
good
Level
enough.
design right there. There it is, folks.
So that's how you were able to build one of the most beloved maps in Halo is Zanzibar.
What really saved that thing was everyone else. I mean, we would play test it at noon and 5 every day.
Yeah.
So every day we're just getting tons and tons of feedback, and then Max, Steve, and I at night would update it, and then we'd play test it again. So again, getting back to what we were talking about before, the level of iteration we were able to do over those 4 weeks was amazing.
Yeah.
And people had flipping awesome ideas, and
yeah, I was just going to say my memory's, I think, becoming even more clear. I think we were always going to be at E3, and we were always planning. Well, not always, but at least for that 5-week period, we knew we'd be at E3 and we'd be showing off multiplayer because we had to get people excited about buying the game that year. It was 2004.
Yes, and I think we might have had. Well, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, but we weren't planning on doing anything at the press conference, and that's when I think we said, well, we've got this nice, multiplayer map that we're going to be having people play because I think that was the only map they were allowed to play, right?
Yep.
At E3 was Zanzibar.
Yeah.
And so I think that's when we said, well, we could show Zanzibar at the press conference, and then of course, Joe came in and made a whole script out of it. Him and
awesome.
Max playing with each other, and there was an opening sort of cutscene and a closing cutscene that we, I scored music to, and we had, the elite up standing on top of the beach wall. We had this whole thing. So we actually made it, but we made that stuff. We probably made that in like 3 days. I don't remember, but that whole thing came together right at the end.
Well, and even it looked terrible because it was all gray box, and then like all the environment artists dogpiled it over the course of a day. So like Dave Dunn and Paul Russell and all these people.
It's a
jumped
pretty
on
map,
it, and in 24 hours turned that thing around from
and
looking
we had
awful.
the blue screen of death in the
our little just yeah. So in Zanzibar, if you got into the second floor as the attackers, you could hit this button, raise the gate, but then the button broke, and someone who shall remain nameless said, "Oh, we should make that the blue screen of death."
Yeah.
And this is where Microsoft just loves us so much.
I heard recently somebody said, "Yeah, I was talking to fill in the blank, some head person over at Microsoft 343 Halo Studios, whatever it is, and I brought up your name, and they didn't respond warmly."
No big smile.
What? What's the problem?
We're trying to help. We help. Yes.
Well, okay, so when I think about it, and like I last summer I was at the in Las Vegas. They had the big Halo 2 20th anniversary.
Oh, right. Hey, actually, wait a second.
Go ahead.
What's summer like in Vegas? Hot?
It is ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
it's 118, literally.
What are you doing? I mean, is that good on the bones
insane.
as you get older?
For my bones, it is actually kind of not too bad. It helps me get out of bed in the morning. A little heat.
Okay. A little warmth.
All right. Anyway, yes. So, great tournament. It was all the old stars of Halo 2 multiplayer online. It was the first. All the stars from the first Major League Gaming people that took off. And it was just so much fun to be there because I'd never been to one of those events when it was actually happening during our Halo days. I just never went to any of the tournament things.
Right.
So it was fun to be there and watch them play. And, they're watching those people play who, spent so many tens of thousands of hours playing Midship or some of these things. Like I remember the gray box for Midship, and you even explaining what you were hoping to accomplish, and me going, "Yeah, that sounds cool. I don't understand what you're doing, but it was great." But having fun playing it, and then it slowly took shape, and it seems like Midship is just one of the most favorite games for multiplayer, for competitive multiplayer. They just can't get enough of that.
Yeah, the side. I mean, it was actually I think Max laid out the original one, and it was supposed to be kind of this crazy two-on-two CTF map
Yeah,
where one person could play defense, but also with the battle rifle support another person like trying to capture the flag.
yeah.
But it really has turned into, and this was a Steve Cotton special, just a great 4-on-4 Team Slayer map
Okay.
with all the multiple
Yeah,
tiers and
yeah.
all the view angles. I mean, just
But
amazing.
what did you have to do? Did you work on Midship along with everybody else, or I
Yeah,
mean,
like
everybody being you and Steve, right? It was mostly
I mean, our incredible, huge team
yes.
of, yes, the two of us. No, Max had, I think, done a drawing, and then I had blocked it out, and then I iterated on it for a while, and that's where we got some of the sight lines, and that's where the first man cannon came from. Was
Oh,
on midship, where you could run underneath, and it would throw you up onto the platform.
huh.
And originally it was so we had this system in Halo, this door system where essentially I could put a volume down, and when I step in the volume, it animates something, and
Yeah.
we would use that for doors. I walk up to the door opens. So we tried this thing where we put it over this column, so when you stepped in that zone, the column would animate, and it would shoot you up in the air. And when I first tried it, I stepped on it, and the screen went black. I'm like, oh god, I crashed the game. But then I could still look around, and I looked down, and I saw midship just disappearing into infinity,
The
and I'm like,
physics are
okay,
working well.
maybe too much on the on the door
Yeah,
animation.
that's
Yeah.
good. That's good.
So yeah, so we got most of it working, and then Steve came in and just took it to a whole nother level with all the Covenant ship stuff and all the curves and all that stuff. Um, yeah,
Well,
it made it
and then of
beautiful.
course you also you did a lot on Lockout too, right? Wasn't Lockout one of your
Yeah, I mean Lockout and it was Lockout and Ascension, and I think Burial Mounds were the first three maps that we got up really early.
hmm,
So the thing, especially about Lockout, is we just got tons of playtesting on that
okay.
map, and it was able to evolve over time, and we would move ramps around and doors. But that whole idea came from sort of something that we noticed from Halo 1, where it's really interesting and I think really exciting when you can see someone but not instantly annihilate them.
Yeah.
So like you see someone for a second, like Marty
Yeah.
ran into that building,
Yeah.
and I don't know, is he upstairs? Did he drop down a hole and now he's downstairs? Or is he baiting me over there? Or and then Lockout essentially is three floors,
Yeah.
and the top floor is really open and has a lot of different sight lines, so you can see kind of the four main structures. And then the next floor is fairly closed, where it has those walkways to each structure, and then the lowest floor is mainly just that shotgun alley, very closed.
Right.
But it's all laid out in a way where you can kind of see also vertically, so you can see across, but also you can see people crossing under you. And that map really allowed people who were good at moving. I'm not good at any of these things, but if you're good at shooting
Yeah.
or at moving, like you could jump well and crouch jump and you
Yep.
understood all the
Well,
subtleties
let me
and
ask you about that because it
yeah,
seems to me that when I see the pros playing these games, of course they don't look anything like me because basically I would always like, well, here's a path. You run along this path and then here's a door and you go through that door. You watch these people play and they're never on the path. They are doing weird jumps, they're going
yeah,
crossways over corners.
right.
They have a pathway through these maps of yours that how much of that was anticipated by you? Did you like
100%.
okay. That's another lesson for you youngsters out there. Always take credit for everything. That's
No,
good. If somebody likes it, say, yeah, I planned that. Yeah.
no, the MLG folks, they would be running on pieces of trim that were sticking out, and then they would be able to jump through windows that weren't really designed to be jumped through. I mean, I always find that stuff really impressive because they just show this level of mastery over how to
Yeah.
move through the space, in addition to shooting like no
Yeah.
one else
No
I've ever
scopes
seen.
and yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
that's what always strikes me. I have had this conversation with Jason Jones back in the day where like there were accidental things that we were successful with, and it's like part of the magic sauce. And would get mad at me about this idea of that. He would be like, "No, everything was planned." And it's funny because like I had this discussion with my friend Mike Hill in my first.
I love Mike Hill, by the way.
Oh, do
He's
you?
excellent.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I worked with him
He's really a great. He's very insightful. But anyway, you never worked with him, did you?
I worked with him a little on Valorant.
Oh, really? Oh,
he
how
worked
about
on
that?
Valorant for about a week or two.
Oh,
and I love
wow.
his lecture about the chair.
Yes.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, his
Yes.
lectures are amazing.
They're amazing.
He's got insight. But anyway, one of the things he said was that a director is not so much the person who is in control of everything as much as a what's the term?
Facilitator?
No, not a facilitator.
It's like talking to my parents right now.
Yeah. You know that good guy.
Almonds. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, I should have taken notes and had them ready to go.
Okay.
No,
That's all right.
immune system. Part of the immune system. It's sort of the thing that prevents certain things of getting through and wrecking something. So they're like this immune system that it's like you have an idea, and then the immune system goes, no, that's not going to fit. So I have a more fond memory now of how Jason works, because he really was someone who wouldn't let certain things in, and he knew what sort of the big picture vision needed to be and what things just shouldn't get all the way through and infect the project. So to that extent, I think he was really sort of in charge of what ended up happening. But I also know that there were many, many things that people love that I don't think any one person had, intended necessarily, except for all the music, which was extremely, like, totally, completely intended.
Right.
Every single thing about it.
Amazing.
All right.
No,
Go ahead. I was going to ask you a little bit more about your history, like where you went after Bungie, but go ahead, talk about whatever you were going to say.
Well, I would say whatever the hell you were to say, Chris. Now, I think especially the early Halo 1, Halo 2 time frame where we had that 40 or 50 person group, and you knew everyone and had a relationship with everyone, that there was just a certain feeling of trust that you had, where you could try a bunch of stuff and you'd get a bunch of feedback, but you knew it was all coming from a good place, and it really allowed us to not only iterate quickly because we were fairly small, but also people just had freedom to try all sorts of things.
Right.
And I do think that's why, like, even the smallest details on Halo 1 or Halo 2 just feel fairly good because they,
Yeah, it was a magic time. I talk about it. It's sort of like Camelot, and when Camelot is happening, you're not really aware it's happening. And in hindsight, you look back at your career and you go, "Wow, that 7-year, 10-year period or whatever it was pretty magical in a lot of ways." So, but so, all right. So you were. All right. Well, let's do this first.
Okay.
Got a little surprise for you, because during Halo 1, I had a call out for people who, you know where this is going.
This is where you hit FF, get to the next segment.
I had a call out for people inside Bungie to help me flesh out voice parts that, maybe one-off lines, only one character doing this one line. And so we would open it up to the studio. And I remember you coming in, and I remember thinking, well, this probably isn't going to work out, but I'll be nice. Chris seems like a nice guy, and so
let's at least let him try.
Let's give it the old college try.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm going to tell you right now, of the entire Bungie players, people who worked at Bungie who ended up doing voices on the game, yours was the best by far, hands down, the best performance. And
That's
I'm going to
ridiculous.
play it for you now. And I'm playing it on my iPhone, which means I will send the file to James, who will edit it in. So just assume that you will also be able to see this later. Wait a minute.
Roll sound.
Rolling. Sound production, take 2.
I like how you, again, this is like with my
This is
parents.
high tech. This is so high tech.
Hit the play button.
At some point, we will work out how to do this live. Here we go.
Scene 59, take 3, marker.
Seriously? This is really funny because
Well, I'm impressed that you're prepared.
I am prepared.
Yeah.
Doggone it.
Let's try it again.
Here we go. There it is.
I got a bad feeling about this.
Boy, you always got a bad feeling about something.
Sarge, can you hear me?
What's going on, soldier?
We've got contacts, lots of them, but they're not Covenant. They're just tearing through us. What the? Oh, no!
Corporal, do you copy? Over.
Oh, is
There you
that
go.
the original?
So there you are. I
Yeah.
literally clapping at the end because the people who are watching this are so thrilled. You did, no, you honestly did this great job. Like out of nowhere, I'm like, okay, you know, you're really desperate. You're getting killed by the flood. You're getting eaten, and go. And it was just like instantly, you were that person who apparently. Well, let's see if you know this. Do you know what the name of that character is?
Jim Swarthout? No, I don't. I don't know.
I looked it up online because I was looking for it, and it's even the AI programs will tell me that Chris Carney played Corporal Lovick.
Lovick.
Do
knew
you
that.
have any clue where that comes from? Because I don't. I don't
No.
think we named this character.
I don't know
And,
where
so yeah,
Frank
you were,
Lovick
you were in
came
charge.
from.
Corporal Lovick was apparently in charge of Second Squad, and
The go-getter.
yeah.
He was.
So I think somewhat. I think we could probably say Corporal Lovick might have been one of the first casualties of the flood. So, it's pretty intense.
Right. He came from Iowa and had.
There is a backstory there someplace. Speaking of which, then you went ahead on Halo 2 and you made a level, a game, a map.
I worked on
multiplayer
some
map.
things. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one of them was called the Ivory Tower.
Wait, was Ivory? Yeah. Ivory Tower was Halo 2. Yeah.
And
What was that, Marty? What was that named after? Where did we pull that phrase
so
from?
my memory, of course, of the Ivory
Okay.
Tower was this
Okay.
wonderful place that anybody at any time could come in, grab a handful of M&Ms,
Mhm.
plop down on the beanbag chair, and be in a very quiet place and just unload problems. It's a good old Uncle Marty.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay,
I think that's
there you go.
correct. Yes.
So you were honoring the Ivory Tower by making a.
The experience of Ivory Tower was in Earth City, like the top penthouse suite of a
Yes.
building.
Mm.
There's like a wood floor, remember,
Mhm,
and then sort of a tropical garden.
It was very expensive.
There was an elevator that
Yeah.
helped maintain the wonderful area.
Yeah.
And so when it came to naming the map, we instantly knew exactly.
Well,
to
and you
name
guys,
this after.
somebody wrote a little description that it was owned by popular Playboy bon vivant.
That was probably
Lance
Max.
O'Donnell. The name Lance
Yes,
O'Donnell.
I think it was Lance O'Donnell. Yes.
So
who wrote
anyway,
that.
I feel very good about that.
Well, that was another one we spent a ton of time iterating on. I worked on that one with Paul Russell for quite a while,
Oh,
and
okay.
that was one of the also first Halo 2 maps that started percolating.
So then, after Halo 2, did you didn't work on? Well, of course you worked on Halo 3. I forgot that we
I
got
did.
Halo 3.
Yeah.
And a whole new set of maps, and then you worked on the multiplayer map pack that came out of after that, which was a bunch more
Probably.
expansion maps.
Yeah, just maps.
Cranking those
I
out,
don't
man.
know. Yes.
See,
Yes.
what was your favorite? What are your fond memories about the Halo 3 era maps multiplayer?
Halo 3 was great in that I actually got to work. There was like there were four of us working together. So
Okay.
Justin Hayward, Steve
Oh, that's
Cotton,
what Justin came in. Sure.
and Mike Bilterman. And so we actually had a
Bilterman.
good crew incubating a bunch of ideas,
Yeah.
and we were passing things back and forth. So it wasn't me just depressed in a corner by myself, pondering my life choices.
This was Camelot. What are you talking about? It was
No,
Camelot period.
it was a good level design crew.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we were able to try a bunch of crazy things. I still think the craziest thing we tried was the elephant. Like
Oh
we
yeah.
made a
Oh
vehicle
gosh,
just for
that's right.
multiplayer that essentially was a moving box that we shoved a vehicle in
Slow
and
moving, but huge. Yes.
yes. And remember for a while you had Little Spanish Flea as the horn?
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
We should
I
we should
forgot
have
about
kept
that.
that.
I think we weren't able to get the rights to do that. We wanted to though. That would have been
Yeah.
fun.
It was for a brief time,
Yeah.
like Camelot. It was amazing. Yes.
And then you didn't work on ODST. You went right to work on Reach.
Yes.
And I remember early on Reach, you were more than just going to be involved in multiplayer. You were involved
Right.
in the story of Reach.
Yeah.
You worked with Marcus on blocking out the
Yeah.
story. And did you design some of do some environmental design on Reach too, or were you what was your main role on Reach?
What the hell was I doing? No, the Marcus, Lee Wilson, Joe Tong, the four
Yeah.
of us really came up with that idea as far as what Reach was. Like we were given a really limited window. It's
Yeah.
like you can't use the Master Chief.
Right.
You only have 18 months.
Right.
It can't suck. So, and so we came up. Originally, Reach was going to be more of a multiplayer focused experience, again, like a warfare, where we had this idea of invasion, and we were going to make, I mean, kind of almost like Myth, where it was these battles that occurred on Reach, and each one was an invasion map, and then there was going to be little, almost like ODST style campaign missions in each one.
Yeah.
But it was not going to be a long linear campaign because we didn't have the time. But we were going to go all in on invasion, and then you probably know way more about this than I do. Things were happening upstairs where suddenly Reach became like a 3-year game.
Yes.
And it needed a full campaign.
That's right, and that had to do with we started working on Reach when there was still this idea that maybe there was going to be Peter Jackson involved
Mhm.
in some other project,
Mm-hmm.
and then that fell through, and we ended up doing this shorter thing called ODST, which we were going to do in a short time, which then meant Reach had to like take 3 years and be a major,
Release.
basically be what
Yeah.
would have been Halo 4
Right.
in the timeline. And I'm trying to remember if Marcus came back and just said, you know what if we did a prequel? Like, what if we did something? I don't remember when the idea that it would happen all before Halo 1, 2, and 3. And so we wouldn't have to deal with bringing Master Chief back or what's the Cortana and Master Chief story. We could leave that for subsequent teams
Right.
later.
Right.
But we were
Right.
going to do this, prequel that would just wrap the whole thing up. So at the end of Reach, you were at the beginning of Halo, which I thought was a great idea. I don't remember where that came from. Do you remember that by any chance?
Yeah, so the kind of original idea that we were working on was because we couldn't touch the Master Chief, and we wanted it to make.
Well, I mean, we could have, but we made the decision.
See,
let's
well,
not do Master Chief.
You know more than I do.
Well,
so
that's the only part I know is we had
all right.
there was no rule from on high that we couldn't do
Okay.
Halo 4. As a matter of fact, I think the powers that be at Microsoft might have wanted that. They were looking askance at 2 games coming out that had no Master Chief.
Right.
And not only
Right.
that, but in Reach, as you remember, we basically killed the Master Chief.
No, Noble
No,
Six.
not in Reach. In Halo 3, we had killed Master Chief.
Oh yeah.
So we didn't want to like bring him back and just destroy that idea. He's just floating out in space with Cortana forever. Like, no, we'll just leave that out there. But like, we're gonna, not touch Master Chief. It would have been too hard to try to do one game that wrapped up the Master Chief and Cortana story. So
Yeah, and there's something elegant about him just floating out there.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
we can grab him when we need him again, but just let him drift
wake
for
me
a
when
little
you
while.
need me. Yeah.
But yeah, the original idea to use Reach was to kind of stay away from that and come up with like a timeline that was, really short, where we didn't have to do a lot of narrative work. This was initially when we were coming together. To where, let's just tell the stories of these battles, and then one of the original things that I think really resonated for us was when you play Halo 1, you learn like the Master Chief is the last of the Spartans.
Right.
And there were like 300 of them or something like that. I don't remember specifically.
Everybody who's paying attention, Master Chief, last of the Spartans.
Last of the
Not
Spartans.
a bunch of other teams out there who are Spartans that are still
No.
floating around. That's
Right.
not part of our canon.
This is just the game. I didn't read the books much at all.
Well, that's obvious.
Yes. So if he's the last one, well, what happened to all the other ones? And I think in Halo 1 you learned, I think the Pillar of Autumn is escaping Reach, or you hear about Reach. Like,
Right.
might be just one line.
Right.
Well, they died on Reach.
Yeah.
So we were asking ourselves, well, why did all the Spartans die on Reach? Was something crazy happen? But thinking about it more, if these guys are like the elite of the elite soldiers for the UNSC, the reason that they died on Reach is they chose not to leave. Like they were going to stay. And there, okay, we can make a story about that. And at the time, too, we were watching like Band of Brothers, and, Zack Snyder's 300 had come out, and Black Hawk Down, and all these stories about really it's all about the guy next to you.
Yeah.
It's just about you, your team, in these small situations. So that's where this whole idea came of like, okay, well, let's tell the story of these Spartans, and it's not going well.
Right.
And in the end, can it at least have meaning?
Yeah.
And so that's where the overall narrative came from.
I think Reach actually accomplished that in spades. I'm trying to remember. I know that, believe it or not, I forget how it was presented to me, but at some point during that early stage, the overall concept was given to me, and I'm like, oh, okay, so like from the beginning, the ending.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was
That was good.
well, that's a good marketing line.
Yeah.
So I think we used that. But I was like, oh, this is like the Titanic. This is
right.
You go to see the Titanic, and you can still be, there could still be a compelling story with characters, and you don't know, is Jack going to live? He's going to die.
Right.
But you know that the boat sinks, right? I mean, you know Reach is going to fall. That is already a known quantity. But will anybody survive? Will there be any cool secret way for people to survive? And I still think one of my favorite things to work out, and I don't remember where the ideas came from, but my memory was that it was this like little tight crew of people that came up with that coda, the survive. You get to the end, Pillar of Autumn is flown away. Cortana is going to go on, and Master Chief is going on into the future, and you come back, and there you are, and it just says survive.
So good.
And because I remember thinking, you've died so many times playing Halo. For years, decade now, you've been playing Halo, and you've died multiple millions of times. And
you always come back.
And you always come back. You always pop right back, right? And so I was like, how do we make that final death of your character, Noble Six, actual death, have meaning and actually feel like you died? And I just thought the solution was great.
It was awesome. It was amazing.
That was a blast to work on.
Yeah. No, and I think we also did just that whole experience of Reach, just working on it. A lot of the upper folks at Bungie were working on Destiny already.
Yeah.
And so it was really a lot of us who had, other than Marcus worked on everything, but a lot of us who had worked on things, but really hadn't been able to, help craft the story or the feeling or the mood that players are going to go through. So again, it was a great environment where folks were really open and trying to just come up with great ideas like the one you were just talking about that would really resonate for players. And I just think that worked out in the end.
Yeah, so here we go. You were there for the entire Bungie period of Halo, from Halo 1 all the way through Halo Reach. Then we moved off. We started working on Destiny. You came in on Destiny. Now, you worked on Destiny 1 and some of Destiny 2, or when did you
Marty,
leave?
I didn't really get caught up in release titles. No, I worked on Mars and the Moon. These two planets. So
that wizard came from the moon. I remember that.
Our joke on our team was like, we specialize in white dust or red dust. Those are the two planets we get to. We don't get trees or oceans or
ice,
anything cool. We just get dust. Oh, and more dust.
Yes.
So, I worked on that for 4 years, mainly up to like the release of Destiny 1, and then I worked some on Taken King, and then I left before Destiny 2 came
Oh,
out.
you did.
Yeah.
Now, was that a happy leaving? Was that just you were ready to go? Do you remember? Because I mean, obviously, I
Well-
have my own stories about leaving. Bungie.
Really?
Yeah, believe it or not.
Okay.
I've never probably shared those with you. But
I'd love to hear it. No,
all right, let me tell you. No, just kidding.
no, I think what had happened with me is I, I liked working on Destiny, and I think it turned out great. I didn't love the size of the studio. Like by the time I left, I think when we ended Reach, we were about 150,
Yeah,
and by the time I left, we were like 450.
yeah,
So that small, irreverent group, that I loved so much
Right.
during the early Halo days
Yeah.
was pretty much gone.
yeah.
And then I think we'd also lost some folks who really helped drive our sort of cultural sensibilities as far
Yeah,
as
by
who we were.
2015 So did you leave in? Did you say 2015?
Yeah.
Okay, so by that point, like Max wasn't there, Marcus, me, Joe, Paul, Jamie. There was a lot of the original crew that
Yeah.
who just weren't there anymore, and I think
Right.
some of that feeling was definitely probably not the same. So
Yeah. So I got this opportunity to start talking to some folks at Riot, and Stephen Lim, who I still work with today,
okay,
started talking to me about this shooter that Riot was working on. And I knew Joe Tong had gone to Riot, and I knew about League of Legends, but I didn't know any of the R&D stuff they were working on. So they said, okay, we're making this shooter, and I came down and talked to them and ended up joining this team. And there were like 20 folks.
interesting. Okay,
And they'd been working on it for a couple years already. So
and
they
that
had
turned into Valorant. Is that
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah. So I worked on that game for about 5 years,
Oh
And-
wow,
all the way till it shipped.
and that was huge, right? That was a big.
Yeah, the kids, they like
Kids,
Valorant.
kids like
Yeah,
Valorant.
yeah. They like
And
playing
then,
that.
so who was it? Steve and Trevor, are the two guys you worked with at Valorant?
Yeah. So
And they started the raid base.
I like your hesitancy. Raid
Well, I'm
base.
trying to remember. I had it in my head. Raid base.
Yeah. So Steven Lim, his nickname is Slim because that's his email
Yeah,
address.
like-
So bastard sounds amazing. And then Trevor was the design lead on Valorant.
Okay.
And Slim was the, I think, executive producer. So they started Raid Base, and I went and joined them a couple months, well, maybe like 6 weeks after we shipped Valorant.
Hmm.
And then the three of us started incubating this idea that I'm still working on today. That was 4.5 years ago.
But it's a player versus environment. That's what it
Yeah,
says.
look at you.
Internet.
Look at you. Yeah, I mean, Valorant was really interesting for me because Valorant is very close to CS,
Okay.
Counter-Strike.
Yeah.
In fact, when I applied through you to Bungie and Hardy had me do a test, I actually did a CS map. This
Oh,
was,
really? Oh, interesting.
I don't even think it was Counter-Strike 1.0. I mean, we were
Yeah.
all playing like really early Counter-Strike.
Yeah.
So Counter-Strike had taken off, and Riot's game was going to be a tactical shooter, and so those maps were really interesting to me, where like the precision in those maps is crazy compared to like what we'd worked on in Halo.
Mm-hmm.
Where like, Halo, you move things a few meters and, try to rearrange a sight line, and you can be fairly loose because the Master Chief's fast or the Spartan's fast and they can jump high. On Valorant, we were moving things like centimeters to get like, because if like a corner of your shoulder pokes out,
Yeah.
that's a big deal.
Okay.
So, I mean, the sight lines, you really had to dial down to,
Oops.
is it Marcy?
No.
She's telling you to keep it down?
Yeah, she's
Oh.
saying, "Shut up in there."
Jesus. But yeah, then the game I'm working on now, that was a very interesting challenge for me because I'd never worked on something to that intensity.
Hmm.
And then what we're doing now is, yes, this open world PvP or PvE experience it's not an MMO, but it's MMO-like.
Okay.
And it's also sandbox-like, so think of like a Minecraft I mean, not as intense as Minecraft, but kind of a big world where you can interact with all sorts of things.
So sandbox in terms of even stuff you can like play with and move around and
Yeah.
build and stuff. Oh, okay, cool, fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Right, so there's like crafting
and it's
all
in
sorts of-
a, but there's no single player. It's going to be all PvP, PvE.
Marty, they call
multiplayer.
these an MMO is a massively multiplayer experience
Oh,
where
well,
you.
I thought you said it's kind of like an MMO, but it actually is an MMO.
Yeah, it's just not like a server that's on for years. You know,
Okay,
our servers last.
Is there going to be like lore and story and cinematics and all that stuff too?
I don't know about cinematics, but there's definitely story and lore and factions, and it's a sci-fi game. So
But you're really depressed with the music, right? Because
look, I
not
asked,
me.
and you said, "Look, Chris, I would, but I got to run for Congress."
I got to run for
so,
Congress, which, by the way, has just been announced again. I'm going to take another run at it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that great? We did this entire show, and I held back that I'm running for Congress, and not even asking you about your politics because I know
Well,
that's
you
not
and
a good
I,
thing. Yeah,
in the Ivory Tower, had many late-night conversations about politics.
I know this, that if you
yeah.
lived in my district, you would still vote for me just because.
Yes.
Oh, come on.
No,
Come
I
on.
would.
Yeah,
I would.
You would just because you know. Because you'd like to be able to text a congressman and get a text back. That's
No,
your need.
I want more comedy in Washington. That's what I'm looking for.
Yes.
Some lightness.
There will be as much lateness. Yes.
What does Marcy think about round two?
She's a huge fan. Huge fan.
He's very excited. No,
But
that's
now-
that's exciting.
So
Yes.
you guys, so you went to Riot and then you went with the guys from Valorant.
Yeah.
And they started this new thing. And
Raid base.
Yeah, raid base, and now you've been working on that. So that'll be coming out at some point, obviously.
Yeah, I think. Who knows? But like we did a play test last year, towards the end of the year, where we had about 80 players,
Oh.
and we played for like 30 hours. So it was fairly decent. It's hard to simulate what a
What a
large
massive
world's
league.
like
Yeah,
with
yeah.
a smaller group of players. But we are definitely progressing towards a beta here at some point. In fact, when I know, I'll let you know.
Okay, please. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I will share it with
Oh, come back on the
huge
show.
audience that we have here. Come back on the show. Is this going to be PS5, Xbox, PlayStation, or what are your
Switch.
platforms?
We're going to
Are you going
Switch.
for Switch? I don't know what you're doing.
No, this will be all on the PC.
It'd just
Yeah.
be PC, so no consoles at all.
Yeah, I mean, when you're in a startup, Marty, you just want people to play the game.
Yes,
You
that's
know?
I
You're just
know how
hoping
that
like,
is.
will it not be
Please.
terrible?
Yeah.
Will people like this?
So
Or
at
will
this
they
point, it's
flip
gonna
on
be
Netflix?
yeah, exactly. It's going to be on Steam, and
Yes,
it's a
something like
PC
that.
on Steam.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
can people? Is there early access yet, or how's that? What's happening?
No,
Nothing.
no. There's a
No.
website, raidbase.com. No, we have about 30 folks working on the game now, and
That's a good size. That is a good size.
I love this size.
Is Unreal 5 or what
Yeah.
are you working on? Okay.
Yeah. And I really think there's some magical spot. I mean, I don't know where it is, whether it's 50 people or 60 people, but when you
Yeah,
keep the
I
group
know.
small enough where you know everyone, you're very nimble to
Yeah.
react to things that you
And
see.
the iteration you can do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you
Yeah.
know, I totally agree with you on that. I think I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again because I'm
Please.
at that age where I just keep telling the same stories. There was a point where Marcy asked me when we were making Halo 2, and she said, "How many people work at Bungie now?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let me think." And then I went through, I walked through the entire studio in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually, Steve Okazaki sits there, and Chris Carney sits there, and John Butkus sits there. You know, I went through and I counted up all the people as I went through the studio in my head to each desk. And it was like, 67 or something, or 81. I forget what the number was. But what I do remember was that was the last time I was able to do that.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden, Halo 2 gets shipped and more people, we have to hire more people. And you get into the 150, 160 people, and you can't know everybody, and you can't remember everybody. And then by
Right.
the time, to 2014 in Bellevue, Washington, or Kirkland, No, we were in Bellevue. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were people like that didn't know me. I didn't know them. They had been
Right.
there for a year and a half. Didn't even know who I was. I didn't know who they were.
Yeah.
And it was really just sort of like, oh, this feels really different. So
I agree.
I agree with you on that there's a magic size, I think, for game development that I think is between 60 and 80. I really think you don't want to go much bigger than that if you can help it.
No, I remember when like 2014, 2015, when I was leaving, I swear I didn't know 3/4 of the studio. It felt like, I could recognize them, but I didn't, know who they were or even what they did. And I think that's just, as you start building stuff at a larger and larger scale, you have to scale up the team accordingly. And it's just really hard to keep that culture intact.
Well, Chris, I don't want to keep you a little bit longer. We're already over an hour, which was a very fast hour for me. I love talking about the actual development process. It was a lot of fun. It was funny because you and I did get to talk a lot about story and the emotions of the story on Reach, and that was not something that we ever had done up until that point, because you were always the guy making all the multiplayer maps, and that was a blast. But yeah, so it was a pleasure all those years working with you, and it's good to see you again. Thanks for coming on the show, and we should do this again.
Yeah, I miss our
Maybe next
conversations.
time I'll get Paul Russell and you, and then I can just sit back and watch.
I don't know if anyone would ever want to listen to that, but that would be very exciting. No, I used to sit right near your I think it was on Reach. I was right across the office from your
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
big soundproof door, and would wander in there late at night. And yeah, I always enjoyed our discussions. I miss those. Those were
Well,
good.
I do too. That was a different time, and you're working remotely mostly now, right? I mean,
This is my fabulous office.
there you go, with a washer and dryer right there.
I'm in the basement.
You are in the
Occasionally they
basement.
let
Looks
me
like a walkout,
upstairs.
though. Is that a walkout basement?
It is
It
a
is,
walkout.
okay.
Yeah,
All right.
that's very good.
I
No,
can-
they'll unlock the door and I can come upstairs and eat or hang out with the children if they let me. But otherwise, I'm like a troll. I live in the basement.
Well, I mean, you know that I don't think. When did you get married? You got married after
During
Reach?
Reach.
Was it
so
during Reach?
2009.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
That's right. Because I was best man. I remember that. I was best man at Clay.
Right. That's right. Just like we were talking in the parking lot.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Talking to the parking lot. See, that's probably what it was. We were talking in the parking lot at the Sputnik meeting.
Right.
That's probably what.
And I asked you to be my best man. That was that same conversation.
As a matter of fact, I do have pictures of you at one of my daughter's weddings.
I went to both your daughter's weddings. Yeah.
Both my daughters, some of their weddings. They've
First
had,
weddings.
Yes. All right. Let's not get into that.
Okay.
It's all
Okay.
good.
I was honored to be a part of that.
Yeah, that
Thank
was
you.
fun. That was
Thank
great.
you.
All right,
Lovely.
well, Chris, we're going to leave it there, and thanks so
Okay.
much for coming. And I think, have you never done another voice part in a game?
No.
What? No, why is that? People should know. Once they see this and they hear you were Corporal Lovick. I mean,
From Iowa.
you
Young Frank Lovick. I like how his
brought
story's
him to
just getting
life.
more and
Yeah,
more fleshed out.
That's what it is. All right.
All right.
We will say goodbye to everybody, and
Thank
thanks
you.
so much for coming.
Thank you.
And we'll see you
Absolutely.
soon. Thanks, Chris.
Okay.